is Anger, Session 1. Today's date is July the 8th, 1995. And this is be the first session in a series of 10 where we're going to explore anger and its relationship throughout the entire spectrum of human behavior, in particular in our own personal behavior. So I hope that everybody will come out of here not less angry, but in a better position to manage their anger. All right, so much for introductions, right? This is really a very informal approach to the subject matter. We can obviously complicate it with a lot of terminology and technicality, but I thought that if you're not therapists and people like that, then there's no need to burden you with a lot of psychiatric type of stuff. We're just going to approach this like regular folks, looking for ways to get a better hold of our own anger and things of that nature. So, before though we go properly into the subject of anger, and some of this is going to be redundant because I think we had a session or two before where I talked to you a little bit about some of the foundations of anger theory. But then again, to repeat it a second time, hopefully won't be a waste of time. It'll just give you a better grasp of the whole thing. You have to understand many things here. There is a kind of foundational understanding that has to be put in place first. So I want to talk a little bit about the metaphysics of this all, because whenever we're talking about anger and things of this nature, we're going to be fundamentally talking about the mind. So we have to have some kind of concept of what I'm going to be meaning when I use the word mind or psyche or consciousness and things of that nature. After all, we're talking about managing your interior, subjective psyche contents, okay? And so the language gets a little cumbersome, so we'll start off with a kind of a anatomy, if you will, of the psyche. And we'll talk a little bit about the metaphysics of this all. Okay. I guess since man has had a mind, man has been confronted with the challenge of managing the mind. You know, we think in terms of managing so many things, but managing our own mind is probably the most important thing that we have to do, because that goes directly to the quality of life that we as human beings will be able to experience. So we have to learn how to manage our minds. Now, as children and infants, we learned how to walk, how to gain a certain amount of mastery over our physical body. So we have no problem walking upstairs, running things of that nature. We learned how to talk and communicate and all these other things. But it seems that the deeper we move within, the less skill we develop in managing those parts of our being. So by the time we enter into the interiority of ourselves, into the interior part of ourselves, into the mind, in the contents in that mind, very few of us have the kind of skills that are necessary to deal with that. And so we want to begin to look at some of the things that we have to know in order to put together a fairly decent approach toward mind management. Now, we're going to be talking about anger throughout this whole course. But in the same breath, we're going to talk about some other things. Now, you all know that I talk about the fact that there are 5 fundamental negative states of mind. And I don't even know if I should use the word negative so much. Because what makes them negative is our inability to manage them. Okay? The energy that makes up that state itself is neutral. It is how we use that energy. And one of the energies is anger. Anger is an energy. Okay? Then not only anger, we have lust, as you know. We have greed. We have attachment. And we have ego. Egotism. These are the 5 fundamental forms of emotional energy, when failed to be managed appropriately, will always result in the loss of self-control. When you don't know how to manage your anger, when you don't know how to manage your lust, when you don't know how to manage your greed, when you don't know how to manage attachment, when you don't know how to manage egotism, then the result will be a loss of self-control. Okay? So we have to really give this some serious thought and attention. I mentioned the fact that we'll be looking at the anatomy of the psyche. One of the things we have to begin to understand, what is the structure of the human mind? What does the mind do? Well, you will find that the mind has several clearly distinct functions. Okay? One of the functions of the mind is called sensation. Sensation is sensory. Sensorial. We all know that we take in pretty much most of our information about the world, period, through the five senses, right? What are the five senses? Huh? Seeing, tasting, touching, you know those things, right? So that's the whole sensory system, okay? So that's at one level. The next thing that the mind does, it has to now tell us something about what we're taking in. The sensory system simply tells us that there's something going on out here. I'm hearing, seeing, tasting, touching, feeling something. Don't know what. There has to be something that defines what it is that we are having a perception of. But that is the part of the mind that is involved in the intellectual process. That's the so-called rational part, the thinking part. So something thinks on what is being brought into our range of perception by the sensory systems, okay? Now, once we have had a sensation or sensorial experience of whatever is out here, and once we have added the process of thinking to it, we're going to naturally make an evaluation. We're going to make some kind of a judgment call. So we're going to have to evaluate what it is. We're orientating ourselves toward that thing. It helps, we're coming to some kind of conclusion about the event, person, place, or thing that it just came through to us. Okay? Now, once we have evaluated it, is it good, is it bad, is it in my interest, is it not in my interest, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's a fourth process in the mind, too. And that process has been loosely referred to as intuition. Intuition is a way of almost like seeing around corners. Intuition is a way of having knowledge that is not necessarily dependent upon this whole process. It seems to be able to violate that whole process. It almost seems that you start first with knowledge and you work backwards. But we do have this intuitive process that goes on in us, okay? Where we get some kind of pre-knowledge of things. We get to know the thing, all right? So these then are the major categories and function of the mind, or the psyche, or whatever word you are comfortable with. Now here's the interesting thing. Each and every one of us have a dominant mode that we function out of. Each and every one of us have a dominant mode that we use primarily to orientate ourselves to things that are happening around us. Some people are more sensorial. They sense more, right? They can't see, taste, feel, touch. It ain't real, all right? Their whole life is dominated by this kind of function. Some people are more thinkers. You know, for them, reality is a thought out process. You know, they have to think about it. Thinking makes it so. Thinking makes it real. Even if they see something, touch something, they still have to think on it first before they can orientate it and give it some place in their lives and etc. Some people are more, and I'm using the word feeling. I use it in the very wide sense of the word. They live more out of their feelings. This evaluative part of them. They feel. That's where most of their reality comes into them through. You follow me? Okay. And then, of course, there's some people who are more intuitive. They don't look at no details. You know, you'll note that the very intuitive person whose dominant function and orientation is the intuition faculty, they don't really grasp a lot of detail. They see the big picture and they just come away with that. You see? So they may not remember your name. They may not remember, you know, any of that stuff. They won't focus in on the details. The sensorial person gonna get what? All the details, right? They're gonna know what color pants you had on, what suit you had on. They're gonna know all, they're gonna get all of that because that's where they're focused at. Now, none of these are better than the other, first of all. It simply means this, that usually where we have a dominant function, its correlating function is inferior in us. For instance, where there's, if you can imagine it like, here's thinking, here's feeling, here's sensing, and here's intuition. So if your dominant mode is thinking, then usually your ability to feel reality is undeveloped. Why? Because you've dominated, you see. So your corresponding part, you can't feel too much. You see, or if you're very sensorial, right, then you really don't get a chance to kick into the intuitive level because you're so focused in on the detail. You never see the big picture. You can't see the big picture in life, you see, just details. So it depends on where you're at. And each of us have a dominant function that has a counterpart to it that is usually undeveloped in us. The whole function then of spiritual training and psychological development is to kind of develop the capacity to use all of these because all of these are legitimate, right? It's almost like having two legs but you refuse to walk on both of them and you go through your whole life hopping. Now, you're bound to, you see, run into a situation that you can't hop yourself through, right? So similarly, if you just try to navigate life using your dominant function of orientation, okay, then you're going to find that there's going to be many situations and circumstances in life for which you are inadequately prepared to deal with. You see my point? So we want to have a more balanced thing. Now we're going to be talking about this again and again and again. In this first session, I'm just trying to get you familiar with the metaphysics of it all, okay? And then we will slowly work through it. But this gives you a frame of reference so you know where I'm coming from. Okay. Notice that I haven't put anything up there about your ego or memory or any of those other things. Okay? I want you to understand that this is sort of like, and it's hard to represent this in two dimensions here. But I want you to begin to understand it's more Jung had a very good illustration of this relationship. If you will imagine that here on the surface of your being, okay, here there's a center point, okay? This is the peripheral of your being, all right? These dominant functions that we each have is on the peripheral of our being, all right? Let's say, for instance, if a person is dominant thing is thinking, right? Well, maybe I'll just, to make it very simple. Let's say at the surface part, there's the sensorial, okay? Then then we'll have, let's say, the thinking. Surface. These are the surfaces of your being. And then after the thinking, let's say we have this thing that I loosely call feeling. Okay. And then, this is a horrible diagram, but you all get the picture. I hope you're doing a better job down there than I am, okay? Have some artistic skills. Then you have the intuitive function. These are the functions of the mind, okay? These are the functions of the mind, okay? All of your so-called knowing comes through these particular functions. Whatever it is that you think you know has come to you through one of the, or a combination of the functions of the mind. So you can imagine that if a person's sensorial faculty is not developed, then any knowledge that they've concluded that misses this component, right, is flawed. They don't know the thing totally. They don't have total knowledge. You can't have thorough, total knowledge without necessarily examining and experiencing every event, person, place, thing, every object of perception and consciousness across the whole spectrum of the functions. You follow me? Right? Like you're drinking that juice there. You know, that's a sensorial thing. If you don't know the chemical construct of it, I mean, if you didn't have the thinking part into it, and then, you know, the evaluative part, and then you know something about it intuitively, then you haven't really drank it. You haven't really tasted the tea. In Zen, for instance, if you're all familiar with the tea ceremony in Zen, and you'll notice it's a very different way of drinking tea. The masters drink tea very differently, right? It's a whole ceremony, right? They look at the tea first, you know, because how often do we even look at what we eat? We usually don't, right? So we're missing a lot of things. So again, the idea is that we have to begin to develop those functions in our minds that is dormant, you see. Now, that's on the surface, okay? Now we're moving deeper now. We're moving deeper into our interiority. The next level you will come across now is what we have to call the subjective, and I'm using Jungian terminology only because it's probably more familiar to you, all right? The subjective component of the function, okay? Because everything, when I say subjective components, remember these 1, 2, 3, 4, this constitutes your surface, your outermost layer, all right? This is like a layered thing. This would be purely a, what they call a ecto experience. It's an outward experience, okay? This will become now the first inner, or endo-psyche. And again, I'm trying to stay away from jargon and terminology here, but sometimes it's very difficult because we're started already in a very deep spot, okay? So ectopsychic simply means this part of your psyche that is orientated toward the outside, okay? All of these take you out, right? You notice the flow of attention is outward onto some object, person, place, or thing, outside of you, right? But what is happening outside of you is impacting where? Inside. So it has a subjective component on it, right? It impacts on it, right? And these are the subjective components, okay? And that requires a lot more sensitivity to become aware of that. A lot more sensitivity. But that's the ideal, is to begin to increase our own self-awareness. Hence, the mystics have always said, from time immemorial, that the key to the full development of our potential as human beings is the increase in our self-awareness, right? If the self-awareness is low, you really don't see be cognizant of the subjective impact of these functions on your it'll become clear as we go along. Let me just wade through this here. This is the most difficult part, okay? Because I'm introducing jargon, but I have to give you a big picture, all right? This next circle, and again, we're descending into the depths of your being, will be like your emotion. Emotion. Your emotions, that's a subjective thing. Now, I want you to pay a particular attention to this thing here, because let's say we're talking about the ego here. Normally, the ego has what they call willpower, right? A certain willpower or intention. You know, it can act out of intent. So, for instance, if you wanted to know, I said that we each had our dominant function. You will notice that your dominant function is characterized by the fact that you can will to function. Like, for instance, if you're thinking, if you're a thinker, if that's your dominant function, you will find you have control over your thinking. You can think about things at will. You know, you can shift it, right? But you may have an inferior function in your feelings, right? Which means that when a feeling grips you, you can't do anything, right? It doesn't respond to your will. Notice that. Notice it doesn't respond to your will. That's all. People who, for instance, whose dominant function is through, let's say, the evaluated, the feeling part. You know, they get caught in that. You know, this ain't right, this ain't right, this ain't right, this ain't right. But they can't think about it. All they can go with is that conclusion, right? It ain't right, they can't reflect. Because they cannot direct the thinking function. You see my point? All right, get it? You don't see it yet, okay? You see it? Are you following me? All right then. And this will get better, folks, I guarantee you. But in any case, the next layer as we move deeper toward the interiority of our being is what now we're calling the emotions, right? And you know that's a wide range of things, right? This is really a felt experience, right? And the interesting thing about this is that the deeper we move in, the less control we have. That's why I said that here you'll find anger, lust, greed, attachment, and all of these things, right? These are emotions now. They're made up of emotional energies, right? For instance, when you're under the attack of anger, right? Now you can't get unangry. Even though you may be thinking, this is not right, I shouldn't be angry at my wife, I shouldn't be angry at my kids, I shouldn't be angry at my sister, brother, my whatever, right? But what can you do? The anger is there, right? Because it has moved so deep down inside you, right? You don't have enough will to bring yourself out of that. And so that is the thing that has to be practiced now. You see, developing that, okay? So now you have the emotions, right? And there's different orders of these things, so please, this is not the only interpretation. But then you have memory, right? Memory. And memory is a kind of funny thing, isn't it? Because some things you can remember at will, some things you can't remember at will, even though you know. You meet somebody. Now, you know that person, but you can't remember the person's name. And try as you may, nothing obeys you. The name does not come up, right? But sometimes the name do come up. So memory sort of goes both ways, all right? Sometimes you can bring it under your conscious control, and sometimes you cannot. Okay. But you have memory, right? You live your personal history. And you say, Bhagwan, where in the world are you taking this? Well, I'm taking you on a journey into your own mind, a general journey, okay? As you go through meditation, you become directly in touch with all of this. That's what the journey of meditation does. It gives you some kind of contact with all of these layers, deeper and deeper layers of your being. And each one is an amazing discovery. It's absolutely amazing. This is the study of self. Now, I know you all been used to studying physics, studying philosophy, psychology, history, and those things are nice. But if those subjects have not aided you in the increase of knowledge of yourself, then you are still fundamentally ignorant. You know, in the house of Ra, I don't count academic knowledge as any authentic knowledge. It means nothing. So what? You have a PhD, but you don't know how to love. That's meaningless. It's meaningless. You see the point? So this is the only way to get knowledge. One has to go on the journey with one's own mind. But anyway, at this next layer, there's a layer in us that contains memory, usually our personal history, right? And a lot of that is still unconscious. There's a lot of things that have happened to us personally that we have lost consciousness. Was conscious at one time. It might have been a traumatic experience. We pushed it away on me personally. We'll talk more about that. We're coming close because I'm trying to get down to this thing. I'm trying to get down to the core of this thing. And here, finally, we have this area, and we just call it ego. All right, that's the complex. That's the ego. What is ego, incidentally? When we talk about ego, what are we talking about? Have you ever thought, what is ego?
The feeling or experience that we exist separate from the rest of creation.
Absolutely right. Ego is our felt sense of distinctiveness and separateness. Right? Is anything wrong with that? Of course not. It's when this thing becomes out of control, when this sense of separateness really becomes a sense of disconnectedness. When this sense of distinctiveness becomes a sense of disconnectedness, now we enter into some trouble. Because the reality, you see, is that everything is connected. This is an ecosystem that we live in. We all are connected. Where are we connected at? At the deepest level of our ego. Even deeper than your ego, that is the part, right, where the psychologist said the unknown, the true unconscious. Unconscious because you can't know it. You see, it's unconscious because you can't know it. Not through any of these processes. You have to experience the God, the divine, you see, the creator, the collective unconscious, sometimes, right, that is in all of us. What I'm trying to show you folks is that as we descend closer and closer to our being, there's a part in us that connects with all of it. Just as all of us have a very similar physique, we have hearts, we have lungs, and, you know, there's some distinction, right? But if I take my distinctions to the extreme of saying that, well, I am not even connected to the human family, then I'm crazy. You see? In spite of the distinction of my own arrangement of physical organs and body, that doesn't mean that I am no longer part of this species, right? It's like that. It's like that. Ego gives you the when it's mismanaged and out of control, it gives you the illusion that you are disconnected from the rest of creation. And that is why your fear starts. Now you start slipping into this radical individualism because you're alone. It's you against the world, right? And it becomes very hard. All right, I punished you enough with that. I just wanted to get a little bit of that, and I'll come back to that as we move further and further throughout these sessions. But when I start talking to you about the fact that we're moving inward and that we're moving through deeper and deeper layers of our being, you'll begin to appreciate the direction that I'm trying to take you into, okay? Let's come back to our original thing now. Because remember, this is going to be a series of workshops and seminars dealing first with anger. We're going to talk about lust, we're going to talk about greed, we're going to talk about attachment and things like that too. But we're going to talk about anger more than anything, okay? And maybe sometime in the future we'll break out and we'll do full-blown workshops on the other 5 negative states of mind. But we're going to come back to anger. And anger belongs at what level in our interiority? The level of emotion. So anger is a much deeper phenomenon in us, right? And because it's a deeper phenomenon inside of us, it's less under the direction of the egoist. Right? So we have to have increased awareness to manage our anger reaction. But let me tell you from the outset that the problem is not anger, is it? The problem is the mismanagement. The problem is the mismanagement. When we don't know how to manage this anger energy appropriately, we will manage it inappropriately every time. Now, all violence, for instance, is rooted in anger. You can't have violence where there's no anger. Violence in any form: physical, emotional, financial, intellectual. All of it has to be rooted in anger. But what is anger itself? More deeply rooted in. See? Whenever we have this sense of a threat to our well-being, that frightens us at a deep level. You may not even be, you're not conscious of it. It is happening beneath the threshold of your conscious mind. But there's a deep reaction. You'll feel it in the pit of your stomach somewhere. The body will reflect it. There will be a definite physiology that accompanies fear. You know, fear has a certain look, right? It has a certain way you move. It puts your body into certain postures, right? And it occurs at that level. So you'll have that fear. There's a threat to your well-being. Anger is nothing but the energy that nature automatically gives us to take an action to ward off this threat. The problem is, though, is this, folks, is that the threat may be misperceived. Sometimes it's not one and not even one. And people that are victims of that, they're getting angry and going into this high energy state every 10 seconds. Are they going to whack themselves out? They're going to whack themselves out. They're going to mess their whole life up. We'll look at that too. But we still have not said precisely what anger itself actually is. And so I want to go through that quickly. And again, some of you, I know you should know this, right? So I said many times that anger, according to me, is an emotional, it's a psychological, it's a physical response to the perception of an attack on our person. It's emotional, psychological, it is physical, it is a response. And please make a note that this response, right, occurs in milliseconds. Milliseconds. Because it's coming from a part of you that is deep. And the perception, as Keith has pointed out, need not be based on any reality whatsoever. Is that right? It's your perception. It's your perception. You may be misperceiving. Will that make any difference to the reaction? No. That energy is going to come forth. Not only the perception need not be rooted in any reality, it need not even be located in the present at all. It could be something from the past. Right? Has nothing to do with the present. Or it could be something you anticipate that will happen. Some of us get angry about what we think won't happen to us. Right? The paranoid person think somebody's plotting to kill him. I mean, there's no evidence that anybody even know you're on the planet, you see. But you have a whole hit list made out, right? Of individuals who's trying to harm and hurt you. And you carrying all that anger around, you know, future stuff. All right? So the perception need not be local in terms of time. It can be something from the past or something that we anticipate in the future. Again, will have absolutely no bearing on delaying the emergence of the anger energy. And it's always an attack on your personhood. Something gonna hurt you. Somebody or some situation is trying to hurt you. And that makes you angry. It scares you, in fact. Whenever your perception is that someone or somebody or some person or some event is aimed to hurt you, that scares you deep down inside. It frightens you. And out of that state of fear, the anger energy rises to take some action to ward off that threat. Now that we have a little better understanding then of the psychodynamics of it, okay, we can begin to look at some other aspects of this thing. I want you to tell me how anger affects us emotionally. I've already said that anger affects us emotionally, it affects us psychologically, it affects us physically, right? And of course even spiritually. Right? It affects us across the whole spectrum of our being. What are some of the effects that the anger has on us emotionally? All at once. Huh?
You can't think. You can't. You're irrational.
Yeah, that's a mental, psychological effect, right? It brings you, it knocks out your capacity to be rational, right? Totally. Where's your rationality coming from? It's coming from one of those functions, isn't it? Way out on the surface of your being, right? But we know that as you move deeper and deeper into your interiority and you get down into this layer that houses the energy that makes up anger, you're a long way away from being in charge of your thinking function, aren't you? Right? And you drop into an irrational state. You cannot even think clearly. Because you done dropped out of all of that, haven't you? You can't even see straight, right? I'm so mad I can't see straight, right? The sense of funk, you can't even see, you really can't. So it doesn't matter what your dominant function was, whether it was the sensorial, whether it was the intuitive, all that stuff shuts down on it. It shuts down. You lose access to your primary source of acquiring knowledge, right? You can't see straight, you can't think straight, right? You're all confused, you can't sort your feelings out. You know, I don't know what to feel. You really don't. But you know you're angry. You can feel that, you see. But you can't make no evaluation in that state of anger, right? What are some of the other effects that anger have in any of the categories, you know?
What about fear?
Fear, well, anger is rooted in fear. Anger, as we said earlier, is rooted fundamentally in fear. So we know that that is the core of the whole thing. But I'm looking for some of the effects. And you should be looking, more in particular, you should be looking at how it affects you. Remember, we're not interested in studying other people here. This is a journey about you. It's about you. How does your anger affect you emotionally? How does it affect you physically? We're talking in general, but you should understand that somewhere before these courses are over with, tonight, tomorrow, you should be making out a list of how this stuff is manifesting in me, right? That's the way to get the full juice out of the sessions here.
capacity to be compassionate of the other person's feelings and things of that nature.
Okay. It certainly destroys your capacity to love. Right? Compassion being a subsidiary function where we have the capacity to love. When you're in a state of anger, are you compassionate toward that person you're angry at? But you said you love him. You said you love her. And till death do us part. And baby this and baby that. What happened to all that love in your state of anger? It's gone. You lose it. In a state of anger, you lose the capacity to love. That's deep. That's deep. So you're right, Keith. Emotionally, it shuts down, the capacity. All right? But it's on the other emotional effects of anger. Anger has on us emotional. That could be a physical and an emotional. And I'll put them here both places. Because why? You'll notice that nature has endowed and equipped each and every one of us with automatic processes that enable us to reduce the intensity of any pressure, emotional pressure rising in the system. Now let me clean that up for you because you need to understand this. Whenever there is a emotion is nothing but a form of energy. All right? It's energy. And whenever the mind-body system is impacted and it's filled with an intensity of emotion that becomes too much to bear, nature has given us two built-in methods to relieve ourselves of the discomfort of the intensity of the buildup of that kind of emotional energy. And the most popular one is crying. Like this, a lot of times when a person gets angry, they cry. Even men. I know men, right now, you said men don't cry? No, you ain't watch men get angry. They cry. They get so angry they start crying. I'm gonna kill you, I'm gonna kill you. We hear it all the time, right? They cry, right? Because crying is trying to throw off this energy. Sometimes when the experience of beauty is too much. I can remember listening to Sarah Vaughan before she died. I caught her at Georgia. My wife, myself, and my daughter were great lovers of these female singers. And we had the opportunity to catch Sarah in her last trip through Chicago. And when she sent in the clowns, for those of you who are familiar with Divine One, as we called her, then what could I do? The music was too much. You understand? The energy was too much. Right? And the tears just came because it was trying to relieve me. You understand? Or if you have heard the licks of John Coltrane, I tell the story very often. My first encounter with John Coltrane, I was riding down Costner Boulevard on the west side. And the cut was my favorite thing. Of course, at this time I had Sister Kiva, no experience of this Coltrane phenomenon. And this music came through those speakers, and I fainted, literally. I had to really pull over to the side of the highway, the street, you see, because it was too much. So sometimes when the beauty is too much, at operas, and when Don Giovanni is singing, now you wonder why these people cry, right? Because it's too much. It's too much. If you study the great Greek tragedies, if you read Sophocles or any of the works of Aeschylus, what makes those dramas so much of an impact on us? The tragedy. You cry at movies because you get caught up in it, right? And it becomes too much. So this is nature way. So you're right, Linda. Crying sometimes is a telltale effect, you see. Again, we're looking for what are the impact that anger has across the spectrum of our being. And the subsidiary question is, how does it impact you? I'm not interested in you telling me how it impacts her. What good is that going to do you? Are you going to manage her anger? Or are you going to manage your anger? If you're going to manage your anger, then you need to know how this stuff impacts you. So we're talking in general now, but I want you each to do the homework. Remember, folks, if you don't do homework, according to me, is actual work on yourself. Homework is not reading a book, and marking through it, right? Because that'll be unconscious by tomorrow, okay? Homework is not just simply coming here and spending a couple hours on a weekend, right? Homework is actually working on yourself consciously. There is a part of evolution that is just giving, all right? I mean, nature is going to evolve you to a certain point automatically. You didn't have to do anything to grow up at all. We had to do nothing, keep for our beards to grow and our mustache to come. Ladies had to do nothing to bring their breasts out and their ovaries and nothing. It was given. Nature just gives you that, but only up to a certain level. Evolution into God realization is not given. There is a kind of evolution that only occurs when it is consciously created. You have to understand that. You have to understand that. So, I want you to appreciate the fact that spiritual growth is not automatic. Something has to be done, and that thing that has to be done very consciously. And it only can be done by you. No Messiah, no Guru, no Master. Yes, they can serve as inspirations. Yes, they can demonstrate to you what is possible to you. Yes. Bottom line, you got to do it. No tricks, no miracles. You actually got to know thyself. That's why our ancient African ancestors wrote these words so prominently across their temples in Karnak. Because this is the foundation of all spiritual growth. You must know yourself. How would you make spiritual progress if you don't know yourself? Spiritual progress and knowing yourself are synonymous. They're the same thing. They're not different phenomena. But you have to study yourself. So I want to emphasize that. Now, but in a general way, let's continually look at the impacts that anger has on us across the spectrum of our being. I'll just throw some up here and see if you agree with me. One of the impacts that anger has on us psychologically and mentally, in addition to rendering us irrational, right? You can't think, but it creates depression, don't it? Huh? Do you know black people suffer from an inordinate level of depression that you know?
I guess loneliness is like a subsidiary of
loneliness sometimes, yeah. Loneliness can be in there. Now, and I make a distinction, Keith, between loneliness and aloneness. Aloneness is a different phenomenon. Aloneness is a spiritual growth. Right? Loneliness is a spiritual descent. It is a sign of the absence. You see? It is the absence. Aloneness is a very different thing. But this depression, this loneliness, is one of the direct impacts that anger has on us. And how is that? Because it's kind of hard to see. Later when we're going to talk, after a break, we're going to start going into the formal categories of anger, and you'll be able to see this clearly. But one of the categories of anger is anger at the self. All of us get angry at ourselves because we done did something that violates our pseudo-artificial image of ourselves as being perfect. You done messed up something. You done made a bad judgment. You got it all wrong. You done married the wrong person, or you got the wrong job, or you did the wrong business adventure. The damn thing has collapsed, it has failed, and you are angry first at the parties that was involved. Right? That's first, more, foremost, you blame it. You point that finger, this man was never no good, it's so-and-so, 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 right? Now that's the first level of relief. But even after you don't blame the no good man, for 10 or 15 years, something in you is still neurotic, something is still suffering. There's a suffering that has not yet been understood by you that is still lingering And that anger at yourself is experienced as depression. Right? You're depressed now. Depression is now you don't have no emotional energy. That's one of the reasons we call it depression. That you have you have no energy. Remember, when you lose these energy forms that makes up the spectrum of emotions, you can't move. We call them emotions. It is the energy that enables us to move. That's why we call them emotions. They're energy motions. Short to simply say emotion. Now, when all of that has been drained out of you, now you can't get up out of the bed. Yeah, you can wake up. Because biology will wake you up. You see, but you can't get out of the bed. You have no energy to even get out of the bed. You have no energy to eat. You have no energy to work. You have no psychic energy. You're in the state of depression. Right? All the energy is gone out. And very often that energy is gone out because you have beat yourself up for making a mistake. And you thought you were not capable of making mistakes. Which means you mismanaged your ego. You allowed yourself to formulate an image of yourself that was rooted in no reality whatsoever. It gets very deep. So after the break, we'll start getting into these things, okay? But I want you to begin to understand that this internalized anger at oneself, without fail, will create depression. And all the Prozac in the world will not get you out. Yes?
Which category would embarrassment fit into?
Again, you get angry at yourself.
Oh, that's the same.
Oh yeah. When you're embarrassed, what is the experience of embarrassment? It's when you shame. In whose eyes?
Your own.
Right.
Yeah.
Your own eyes, right? And you shamed of yourself. So that means that you just altered the relationship that you had to yourself. You start thinking,
But shame is a good thing, though, isn't it?
well, depends. You see, shame is not the same as realizing your shortcoming and your weaknesses, right? Shame is a very different experience, right?
But at least, gets you to acknowledge that
If
something's
you
not
don't
right.
get stuck in it.
Yeah, some people wallow. Some people can't deal with it. They don't know how to process change. Let's say if you got an image of yourself, right, that is exaggerated. Remember when I talked about this egotism, right? And you have to understand this egotism. And egotism, we know, as Keith helped us to understand, is first and fundamentally a sense of separation. That's the classical yogic terminology. I like to call it a sense of distinctiveness.
Or disconnection.
Well, it's a sense of
Disconnection.
distinction. It begins with that. But it deteriorates into a sense of disconnectedness.
Right.
Yeah.
Because everybody thinks they may be distinct or
Right.
unique.
But you're disconnected.
That's the problem.
Right? That you are individuated.
Mm-hmm.
And hence, very often, egotism collapses into radical individualism. I'm doing my own thing. Just me. See what I'm saying? Against the world. I don't need nobody. Right? I don't need other human beings. Absurd! I don't need a husband. Absurd! I don't need a wife. Absolutely absurd. I don't need brothers, sisters, friends, family. Nothing. Absurd. You are headed for madness. Pure madness. You know what I mean? Because it's a bankrupt phenomenon. It's like saying I don't need air. I don't need food. I don't need water. I don't need sunshine. I don't need the trees on this planet. You take these trees out, we all gone, folks. Because nothing else is going to put the oxygen in the air that you must breathe. So your destiny is irretrievably tied into and linked into the existence of trees. So why are you killing all the forests? You're a man. You understand? We fail to understand we're an ecosystem. So egotism, when it is out of control, right, increases a feeling of disconnectedness, this separateness, this individualism, exaggerated to no bounds, right? That's the core, right? But it deteriorates even further. It wouldn't be so bad. Now it deteriorates into arrogance, vanity. Vanity meaning for me simply the false basis for your pride. False basis for your pride. You have arrogated to yourself virtues, talents, and characteristics that you don't even possess. We very often hear the term self-esteem thrown around. We have to understand this thing. Self-esteem. This is esteem means estimate. Comes from the same root word of estimation. It's your estimation of yourself. Now this is very hard work to do. I didn't say, folks, that spiritual and psychological and emotional growth is easy. It's not easy. It requires a kind of brutal, almost ruthless honesty. You really do. You really do. Because we've been filled full of so much crap. You know, so much crap. That we become identified with and you're clinging to it as if that's you. And it becomes hard now. Right? So hence the mystic says like dying. In the epistle, Paul said you got to die daily. Daily. Meaning that this is something you have to do every day. You got to clean yourself. I mean, you have to do this thing. You have to do this thing. It's not a one-shot deal. Because you'll pull yourself up into a little awareness, and then in the next instance, you plunge back into the same mess again. And you got to get up and you got to keep doing this over and over again. There is no other way. But this self-esteem, this estimate that we have of ourselves, when it is exaggerated, you know, it becomes this vanity, don't it? It becomes arrogance. And it means that we have mismanaged our own image of ourselves. Our interpretation of our own image is inappropriate. So hence you'll find, for instance, if I asked everybody here to write down a description of themselves, here's what you're going to put down there, that you are honest, that you are loving, kind, right, that's right, kind. What other things are going to find everybody esteem contents?
You know
what?
You know what? Estimate is like a guess.
Yes.
People are guessing because they don't know.
Absolutely.
That's the problem.
They're guessing.
They're guessing.
Not only guessing, they are also fantasizing.
Yeah.
It's more fantasizing than
They're
guessing.
guessing.
Yeah, more fantasizing than guessing. You know, although there are some that are guessing,
But
right?
I don't know.
But the majority of us are fantasizing. Okay, we're fantasizing. And we're fantasizing that we have this quality called honesty, that we are loving, that we are kind, right? That we are, what is something else? Fair.
Giving.
Patient.
Patient.
Oh, that should be number one.
Patience should be number one. Because that makes you spiritual, right?
Put up
So that's all,
love
we're all on the spiritual path, so we slot patience, we put a high premium
you
on
take
our prayer, right?
Loving.
Understanding. Oh yeah, we're smart. Yeah. Intelligent. Oh boy, it's intelligent, right? And so and so on and so forth. Now we have formed this image of ourselves. Ego is nothing but your image of yourself. Right? Not only, we know that at a deeper level, it is the feeling that you exist. Right? But on top of that feeling that you exist, you now add an image of yourself. Right? Now, since most of us cannot see ourselves directly, we see ourselves through the eyes of others. Right? Now, we got this image of ourselves as having all of these things. Because usually this is what your culture has told you. You know why all of this content is found in your self-esteem? Because your culture has put it there. Your culture said that you should be honest, loving, kind, right? And all that went into you when you were 4 or 5 years old somewhere. You didn't even know what was happening. The tragedy, folks, is that we were forming these images of ourselves when we were 4 or 5 years old. No concept at all. And it was being pumped into us, and a lot of us became identified with it. Only until we entered into some contact with reality, where now your honesty was called on. Yeah, you honest. When there's nothing at stake, you honest. You see? When there's nothing at stake, yeah, you honest. But when there's something at stake, you're not honest. Right? You loving, yeah, when there's something in it for you, but when there's nothing in it for you, where's your loving? What you've been calling loving is business. Nothing wrong, but we should be clear. It's business. I'll do this for you, wife. And then, good husband, I'll do this in return for you. But if you don't do this, I ain't going to do my. That's business. Nothing wrong with it. Sign a contract and be clear on the matter. But don't call that love. It don't look like love to nobody that is seeing love. Right? You are not loving. Hence, we find very often that when we move into these close personal relationships, particularly marriage, the ancestors created marriage because marriage is a great experiment in measuring where you're at in terms of your maturity, psychologically, emotionally, and spiritually. It's a great measure. It's a microcosm of the world. And so you enter into this marriage and you find you don't have no patience at all. Kids get on your nerve, husband get on your nerve, wife get on your nerve, no patience. But you've been thinking you have patience. And so when you're confronted with a situation in life that really calls for patience, you fail. And you feel miserable. Right? And so and you're shamed in your own eyes, right? And you're headed for this. Right? So all of these things, I'm fair. You know, these are contents that we all carry in our self-esteem. There's nothing wrong with those things as being goals. They should be goals, shouldn't it? We should be saying, I'm going to try to be honest. I'm going to try to be loving. My goal and objective is to be kind. My goal is to be fair. My goal is to be patient and all of these other things. These are my goals that I have for myself. But my reality is that I'm a long way from here. My Atseba Ankishanki, I say so often, gave us an infallible test to measure a person's alleged virtue and character. These things is what make up virtue and character. And my Atseba Ankishanki says, where do you go to measure it? If you want to know about Bhagwan, do you ask me anything? Ask me absolutely nothing. You'll get propaganda. Your self-esteem is your propaganda. It is your mythology. It is stuff you created about yourself. All right? If you want to know about Bhagwan, then you go ask my wife, you go ask my children. These are people who live with me. They're in direct contact, you see, with my so-called character. And what happens when you go? Then you will find out. Now, if you go and ask them, well, this Bhagwan claims he's patient, and you go ask my wife and say, the man is lying. The man has no patience. She will tell you. She will give you an accurate measurement of my character. But if I listen to you, you're going to fool, because you yourself don't know you don't have any of this stuff. It's really tragic. I listen in the course of my work to perhaps hundreds and hundreds of people. And it's so tragic because they really don't know. It is almost like the emperor who had no clothes, right? And walking around thinking he was sharp. And the man was naked. There's people who think they have virtues and they have nothing. But it's hard to tell them because it's painful. It has to be done slowly. Maharaji, my own guru, used to say that sometimes this bringing a person to self-awareness is much like the task of removing fine Muslim cloth from a thorny bush. You have to slowly lift each part of the cloth. If you pull it, you'll simply tear it into shreds because, quite frankly, most people can't handle it. They can't handle truth about themselves. They can have a lot of truth about other people and they enjoy it, quite frankly. Gossip, for instance, is popular because gossip, again, builds up our own illusions of our greatness. That's why people gossip. Because by gossiping, they feel good. Have you ever noticed how their eyes light up when you're on a good gossip roll? You know, you feel good afterwards. You feel so refreshed and so renewed, you know. Right? Because what you've done, you have masturbated. You have artificially brought yourself to some kind of level that that is useless. It's unnatural. You see, you have built yourself up at the expense of tearing some other people down. And that's easy to do because, again, all of us, you will find, because of those four functions, remember I said those four dominant functions of how we orientate and relate to life, people, events, places, circumstances, are outwardly done, right? So the flow of attention is this way. So it's easy for you to look at me because all your attention is outside of you anyhow. First of all, most of us don't have no options. So you can look at me objectively and you will find every fault in the world in Bhagwan. No problem. But you cannot look inward, hence you can't see yourself. Right? So it's always easier, folks, to find fault in other people. Always. Very difficult to find faults in yourself. Yet, if you cannot find the faults in yourself, you cannot grow. How is finding faults in others going to help you grow? Is that possible? Does that make sense? It's meaningless. One has to develop the capacity to turn the direction of one's vision inward. Insight has been the term that the mystics have used. One has to develop insight, the capacity to see inwardly within the interiority of their own subjectivity, right? And you got to see every nook and cranny. You got to look in your basement. We all have basements to our beings, where we don't put all that stuff down there, right? Antics, and a few closets, and we got to go through all of them. So again, you have to understand this thing about ego. And when we allow ourselves to lose control of a healthy and accurate management of our image of ourselves, the net result will always be disastrous. It will always be self-destructive and counterproductive, with no exception, because full of all these illusionary virtues, you will start confronting, even soliciting situations in life for which you are hopelessly inadequately prepared to succeed. You'll run and jump into a marriage and you ain't got a shot at making it. You don't have a shot. You don't have the stuff. You see? And you get brokenhearted, and then you get shamed. You see my point? So it's very deep. We're talking about the stuff that happiness is made out of, folks. You know, I don't like to just simply gather here and take your time, and in this case your monies, and just waste it. You see? It's very real. You are in charge of the quality of life that you're going to have. Nobody can do that for you. Nobody's going to make you happy. Nobody's going to enlighten you. Buddha said his last words on his deathbed to his disciple, he said, Apadipo Bhagwan, become a light unto yourself. Yeah. Similarly, you have to take full responsibility for your own attainment of happiness. Yes,
You didn't finish. You said black people suffer from what?
depression. We suffer from inordinate levels of depression. Most black people are angry at each other and ourselves. So when we go into the categories of anger, we're going to add a cultural dimension to it so that this becomes very clear. You see, one of the things that we're angry about is for us standing what seems to have been idly by and fallen into this predicament. And I'm angry at you because why didn't you do something? Right? Won't you get up off your butt and do something? You see us, we just suffering out here, we killing each other. Won't you do something? But you see, I can't deal with me, right? So I'm angry at you, right? Because you ain't did nothing. And I'm angry at myself. And between these two categories of anger, we are going to fight each other. Why should black people be spared the distinct honor of becoming extinct? Many races have been on this planet who are extinct, don't exist no more. We have to be clear about this stuff. You know, gone. Self-destruct. Genocide. You see? Why not us? And there's a lot of anger that we have in each other. It's not just black men angry at black women angry at black men, and both black men and black women angry at black kids, you know. But our whole relationship is fundamentally rooted on anger at each other. And a lot of that has to do with the experience of the Mahatma. We are ashamed of ourselves. Deep down inside. You're ashamed. And that shame always turns into a depression.
When you talk about releasing energy, you said it was two types. You said crying was one. What was the second one? Laughing is the second one?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
Oh,
yes, that's right, laughter. Laughter is another way. That's right, I'm glad
You
you
only
all
talked
make
about
me
one.
be
Yeah.
thorough. I talked about crying and talked about laughter. Laughter is another way of relieving the intensity of energy.
Is that positive or negative?
Oh, these laughter can be either way. It depends on how the person uses it. For instance, some people when they get angry, you know it because they get that maniacal laugh. Bing! You see my point? It's how you use it, right? Self-deprecation can be a great source of relief when you can laugh at yourself, right? You can actually keep yourself in a better frame, a healthier state. When you can not take yourself so seriously. Most of us take ourselves far, far too serious. Far too serious, you know? But to be able to just laugh at the absurdity of your being. Here, I got a PhD and I can't tie my shoes. That should be funny to you. I mean, but see the contrast. You know what I mean? It should delight you, right? But normally we don't do that, you see. So humor then is one of nature's ways of giving us some relief from a overwhelming flood of emotional energy, be it negative or positive. And we'll come back to that again, I suppose, too. Let's just finish up a little of this here. We're getting close to break here. And because afterwards I want to start formally going deeper, a little deeper at least, into the categories. But again, we're looking for some effects. What about physically here? We didn't put much here. The physical effects that anger has on the body.
You gain weight.
Huh? You gain weight? Right. You lose weight. Sometimes, see, you can gain or lose. But a lot of times, when you gain or lose, usually these are psychosomatic reactions to the anger. Because one of the ways that we do this is that anger is not comfortable, is it? Anger, as we will begin to realize, anger is very painful. It fundamentally creates a discomfort because it's energy building up in the body. It's almost like if your bladder starts filling up, right? Right? And you keep on adding each day, more water, but you're not releasing no water, right? Sooner or later, you're going to reach a stage of tremendous discomfort and danger, aren't you? And your bladder is one day going to bust. If you continually refuse to follow the natural law, you got to release, right? Something like that happens emotionally. Each day, you put a little bit more anger in there, a little bit more anger in there. And so it creates more and more discomfort. Now, the way that we sort of find relief from the anguish and the agony of the accumulation of this suppressed and repressed energy of anger that is so discomforting is reading. Because now you get a bucket of that rocky road. You get that spoon. And now you put it in the mouth. It tastes good. And momentarily, that good taste floods yourself. And it obscures the anguish and the agony beneath it. But the problem is that when you finish the rocky road, you still have the discomfort. So you got to go do what? Another rocky road. Right? And the body telling on you, right? You see, the body is telling us what you up to. Because it has nothing to do with hunger. You're eating to get some relief from the psychic discomfort of that energy stored in the body. Now you said lose weight, and just to show you how it can work in an opposite direction depending on the person. Sometimes a person is in a state of anger, and one of the things that anger does, anger shuts down the digestive system. You can't eat. Why? Because when we're in a state of anger, remember the function of anger is to empower the mind-body system in order to take an action to confront and ward off its perception of a threat to our well-being. That's the function of the anger energy, right? Now, in order to do that, the body immediately redistributes the energy in the body-mind system. Now, I don't need to be digesting no food right now because, hell, I'm angry. And I might have to whoop somebody or hurt somebody, so that energy has to go to other parts, though. So that digestive energy, and most of the energy that comes into the physical system is used for purposes of digestion, right? Over 70% of the energy. Because we put so much food, the body uses most of its energy just metabolizing food. Your fatigue is not because you worked out so much today. You're tired because you ate too much, even of the right stuff. We're vegetarians, many of us, but you think that allows you to violate the laws of quantity? Put too much vegetarian food in your body, it's going to have the same impact as a hamburger. Because it's going to use up the hamburger energy of the body. You understand the point I'm making? So what happens is they say the digestive system, you get that nervous stomach. Now you can't eat because your nerves are messed up, right? You can't even hold nothing down. You try to put it out. Because there's no energy here. All that energy is in your head somewhere. And you know it because you start becoming obsessive, don't you? The mind becomes obsessive. Because most of our natural reaction to managing our anger at other people is to seek what? Revenge. So you can't sleep because you laying wide awake at night, mad as hell, and trying to figure out a nice way to hurt somebody without destroying your image of your ego. Right? How can I kill this person and make it look like I'm a man of character? Man! Plotting revenge, but trying to hold on to that little ego image. And he can't do it because it's going to betray him. Because his instinct said, I want to go over here and just knock the woman out. But I can't do that because, you know, I said I'm non-violent, and loving. I got all this. So I'm in a dilemma. I'm in a tremendum. I can't sleep because the Lord has for me calls for blood. And the other part of me still needs to perpetrate a horrible representation of myself. Both are necessary, right? I can't choose. So you get into this obsessive. And when that becomes so big, you can't eat nothing. Yeah. Your head just messed up. You can't let it go. You can't follow it. So, again, it gets very deep. So, a lot of times, you can't even eat. Some people eat. It depends. Again, the question that should come to your mind, how does it affect me? You see? Again, that's the whole idea. We're looking at this thing from a general perspective, but I want you to plug into that, what about me? How do I react to the impact of anger across my spectrum? I mentioned, for instance, spiritual here. One of the things, you lose the capacity to experience beauty. That's one of the telltale signs of the impact of mismanaged, repressed, suppressed anger on you spiritually. It shuts down your aesthetic faculty. You see no sunrise. You can't even hear music. Music don't even sound good. Right? You don't notice a bird chirping. You don't rock with the trees as they wave in the winds anymore. Waves crashing against seashores does nothing. Absolutely nothing. You become what the Hindu mystics have called kutaka. Everything you see is negative. All you can see is what's wrong with life. You become cynical, pessimistic, right? And everything you see is just wrong, 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 no good, no good, no good, no good. You fall into a permanent state of negative.
What about withdrawn?
Withdrawn is another thing. That's
emotional or psychological?
Yeah, that's again becomes psychological and emotional. You know, you shrink, you contract, you become withdrawn.
Well, the opposite of the aesthetic.
Well, it's I would almost say sometimes loneliness can be also a spiritual effect. It depends on how you wish to define the word loneliness. Because these things can't be really pigeonholed. They kind of move around, you see. But definitely, one of the things that happen to create a lot of loneliness when you withdraw from people, because that's the best way to perpetuate your ego. Just withdraw. Nobody will never discover I ain't got no care. They'll never see me. Right? Really? You withdraw. It's a classic reaction that we have whenever we find ourselves confronted with a situation or circumstances for which we have deep feelings of inadequacy. But we know we are unprepared to cope and deal with that reality we withdraw from. Right? So now, deep down inside, I feel that, well, ain't nowhere in the world I can be a husband, or I can be a Because there I can perpetuate my ego mythology. You see? It can remain intact. You see? And you have to remember, we have to have some sense of identity, though. That's indispensable. And the Kemetic system, for instance, we talk about a hierarchy of identities, no? Moving from the lowest dimension of our being, the physical level, it's the level of the cosmos, right? All the way up to what the level of Osiris, right? Asaf, etc. But these are just levels of identity. As we grow spiritually, our identities begin to retrieve and move deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into our interiority, until finally it comes to the center where there is God. And that becomes our identity. And then like those men who have attained God realization and women who have attained God realization, your proclamation will be, I am God. We call it God likeness, the experience of God likeness. Results in a shift of your identity. It's clear. Jesus will say, I and my Father are one. You see me, you have seen him. What's up? Or Halaj Mansur will say, I am God. Or the Hindu mystic will say, Aham Brahmasi. You know, or the Egyptian mystic will say, Anukasa. I am Asa. I'm not Bhagwan, I'm not. You move way beyond. You remember in the schematic here where we had the personal history on one of the concentric rings? You don't move way deeper into your interiority than your little personal history. What do you think this is? You talk about a little personal history that can be confined to 40, 50 years? You think that's all you've existed? Is in this one lifetime? You think that who you are in terms of your personal history is the summation of who you are? It's nonsense. And those men and women who have made deep spiritual progress, their identity, because they have moved deeper and deeper, each time you move deeper into your identity shift. Now when you move beyond this physical body, you actually don't no longer consider this to be the sum total or the basic foundation of your identity. You become something more than just this physical body. You're no longer male, female. You drop that. You move differently. It's to a whole other level. Your identity is not so much tied into the body. The physical body is the outermost peripheral of your being. But isn't that interesting that most of us, our greatest identity comes with this physical body? I am this body. And the mystics are telling you, no. Yes, the body is a part of you, but you way more than this body. But if your identity is locked up there, then that identity will drive how you act, right? So it gets to be very deep. Well, I see I'm 5 minutes over our break time. As usual, I warn you, I talk too much sometimes. So let's take a
All right. Okay.
All right, we're back from break now, so we're going to continue. And you had just mentioned during break about manic depressive, particularly as Phyllis Hyman, because Phyllis Hyman is a high-profile person. And it really shocked most of us because we figured that, my God, first of all, what could she possibly be depressed about? She has all this money, she's a beautiful woman, she has a career going. But it just again goes to show you that, if you recall earlier when I talked about this kind of spectrum, this kind of layered kind of definition of who we are. And we talked about these surface rings, right? Well, all of that stuff is just on the surface, you see. We very seldom know what's going on in the endopsychic realm of a person. What's really going on the inside. So all that stuff just surface. And apparently, you know, she was not able to manage that stuff. So that bipolar, that manic depressive, that so many people go through. I was about to tell you during break that all of us get depressed from time to time. Is there anything wrong with that? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. It's that when the depression reaches a degree that we cannot get out of, when the depression saps all the energy, that's when it becomes counterproductive and ultimately self-destructive. But another interesting thing, very often, it's very rarely that a person commits suicide where there was not some anger. If I would have to guest on Phyllis Hyman, it might have been that she had what we call abstract anger. We're going to be talking a little bit about that. That's also a category of anger. You could be angry just at life. Life had not treated me fair. You know, there was something maybe missing from her life in spite of her wealth, in spite of her beauty and things that was missing, and she was angry. She might have been angry about her illness, you know. But usually where there's suicide, there is some anger, and there is an object of the anger. As most suicides are a result of a person's acting out revenge against someone, something, somewhere. So it's a tragic, tragic thing. So there's, of course, the medical approach to the management of these mood swings. That's just one. But they really don't treat it, do they? They really just render a person basically passive, you know. And so it deals with it at the symptomatic level, but it doesn't go down deep inside and really cure what it is that is causing this missing part of them, right? That is one of the unique domains of spiritual development, is that as you go through that process, and remember, as you go through certain degrees of development, spiritually and psychologically, you will display a lot of the symptoms that looks like some form of insanity. For instance, remember before when I was telling you that as you move up through these different levels of your being, the African ancestors call it the Amen and the Asar and the Chekum and et cetera, all these different levels. In Kabbalah, in Jewish mysticism, you know, they talk about the Ein Sof and all of these other divisions of being. But what we have to understand that as we move deeper and deeper or up higher along the axis, into the hierarchy of our being, our identities changes. So naturally, clinically, when we look at a person like Jesus saying, "I am God," we'll diagnose this man schizophrenic, right? And all of and give him some Prozac, right? The same would have been the case with a Buddha or Mahavir or Muhammad, and so forth, so on. But it is because there's tremendous shifts that goes on. So the difference between breakthrough and breakdown is very big. You know, but one thing for sure is that the mind as we know it has got to die, got to be killed. You cannot attain a higher identity without giving up your lower identity. That does not happen. So in many cases, a lot of the people that go through these crises, these mental crises, are very often our most sensitive and creative people. If you look very closely at them. And the great tragedy is that they're going through a natural evolution within the context of a culture that don't know how to shape that and guide that and hold. In different times and in different cultures, you see, there will have been schools and societies that will take these people who are very precocious and help them, you know, become accustomed to the new reality. And in our culture, we just lock them away in an asylum somewhere or load them up with drugs, you know, and write them off. Very often in ancient times, these would have been the very people who would have become the oracles and the seers and the priests and the priestesses. Because, why? They have demonstrated the ability to step out of this level of reality to a higher level, presumably. Sometimes it goes the other way, right? And that can be distinguished because they may become pathological, violent, etc., etc. But it's a very interesting thing. Point is that there's a lot of Phyllis Hymens, you know, in our culture. Because black people have a lot of depression. They have a lot of depression. You know, when the Indians, the American Indians, you know, you got to be depressed if they wiped out 18 million of your people, reduce you to a nation of a couple 100,000 people. You're going to drink, you're going to do dope, you're going to have a lot of problems. You're going to have issues about your self-worth and value as a human being, right? So black people, as we continually undergo the embarrassment and the shame of our abdicating, you know what I mean, our ancient historical status, it just creates more and more. So at some point, and that's a good thing about, you guys coming and taking this stuff because hopefully you will not be selfish with this knowledge. You see, and share it. Incidentally, I don't know how many of you are interested or, but certainly at the end of these 10 sessions, they are certified for continued education. If you have like a license of therapy or counseling or something like that, you see me at the end of the sessions, I give you your certificates for that. You can send them down to Springfield. It has 45 hours of CEU units, and that takes care of your 2-year requirement in category 2. However, if you don't have a license that you need to just put in the CEUs for, still at the end of this course, I'd like to give everybody a certificate. And if you want to have that certificate, then please let her know, let Emma know, because I have to give you an exam. Right? I have to give you an exam. Well, that's I have to give you an exam. Make sure you're just not standing up here looking at me. All right? I have to measure your retention of information. It won't be hard, but certainly give you a certificate as a anger analyst or specialist. You know, it could be something that you might want to pursue later on in life. Now, last time, I don't know where did we leave off at. We went all over the place, but I'm sure that we were looking at how this anger impacts across the spectrum of our being. And we had talked about how it affects us emotionally, psychologically, physically, spiritually, etc., etc., etc. I know we were looking at some things on how it affects us physically. You will notice, and just to finish off this little part of the overview, physically you will know, for instance, that anger impacts you in such a way that you experience an increased pressure. Your blood pressure goes up, right? Your blood pressure actually goes up. And that makes sense because your heart rate increased fourfold. Again, remember, what is nature doing? Anger is the emotional, it is the psychological, it is the physical response to the perception of an attack on our well-being that scares the hell out of us. And therefore, anger empowers us and brings us to an optimum state in order to take action. Right? It is that old what? Fight or flight. That's right. Simple. Right? And you have the energy to do either. The tragedy is that when we do neither, right, that energy just sits in the mind-body system. That's when you suppress it. Right? Now, you can paint that plastic smile on your face and do all of that stuff, but you cannot trick on nature. The anger is there, and it will take its toll on you. And that becomes very dangerous now. Very dangerous, because it will destroy your emotional, psychological, and even in many instances, your physical health. But the point I'm making is that when this energy called anger, this biopsychic energy called anger, impacts on the body, it's bringing the body to this optimum state to take one of these two actions of fight and flight. And therefore, for the body to come to an optimal level, the heart has to beat faster because they got to pump more blood. Right? You got to even breathe different. Have you noticed your breathing even changed? Your breathing moved from the diaphragm up to the chest here. You're maximizing oxidation. You start almost hyperventilating, don't you? All right? And so the body and mind system is being brought to an optimum state of energy in order to take an action. So naturally, with the increase of the heartbeat, the pressure is going to go up, right? Another thing you experience is the temperature of the body will increase dramatically. I'm hot now. Right. Literally, you are hot. I suppose some people get so hot that they go into spontaneous combustion. But in any case, we do experience an increase of temperature in the body, simply because we also, like everything else in the universe, still must obey the laws of thermodynamics, right? And therefore, in order for any of the systems, any of the processes in the body to speed up, there has to be heat, you see? And so the body produces more heat to speed up these processes in order to release more energy. So you actually experience that as well, physically. And so forth and so on. you'll have a lot more attention. You can sometimes feel it. And you can ask them, so-and-so, you angry? No, but their temples are flaring, the energy about to bust out their head, their nostrils are flaring, and you can see them shaking. No, I'm not angry. You understand? They're clenching their feet, they're trying to hold that stuff in, right? And the tragedy, if they succeed in holding it in, it will implode inside and just destroy all of their subjectivity. You see? I mean, it's really a horrible, horrible thing to do. But again, if you got this ego mythology that you're trying to perpetuate, you have probably a lot of motivation to suppress your anger. Because I'm too sophisticated, I'm too well educated, I'm too spiritual. I've read the Bible, I've studied the Quran, I've read the Gita, I go to church, I'm a this, I'm a that, and I don't get angry. Right? Such denial. What do we get? We get upset. We get annoyed. We get irritated. Pissed off occasionally. But never, I can kill you, man. And the reality is that all of us get angry. Nature has endowed each and every one of us in here with the capacity to kill. Make no mistake of it. No mistake. Therefore, unless we are able to come out of denial and recognize that we have the capacity to do a lot of damage to another person, one of these times somebody's going to be triggered over that threshold, and you're going to wind up killing somebody. Or worse, somebody killing you. So we're going to talk about that too. So I want you, the point I'm trying to make is that anger impacts us across the whole spectrum of our being. It impacts us emotionally. It impacts us psychologically, physically, spiritually, and all of them are negative when it is not managed appropriately. Remember, I'm saying that the problem is not anger. The problem is the mismanagement of anger. Anger has a legitimate function in human behavior. It's necessary. Because when there's a real threat against your well-being, don't you need this psychic energy called anger? Of course you do. Right? Of course you do. How else would you defend yourself in a legitimate situation? You need that. But when it is mismanaged, when it is suppressed, repressed, when it is acted out violently or internalized in a psychologically unhealthy way, then that is the thing we protest. Right? And remember, it stands without any further need to justify the obvious fact that this mismanaged anger will render you totally incapable of making any spiritual progress. You can't make spiritual progress in that context. It's not possible. It has never happened. It never will happen. Not only can you not make spiritual progress, you can't even make any other kind of progress in just your ordinary relationships. It doesn't work. Most marriages fail because the two individuals, the man and the woman, cannot manage their anger. Cannot resolve conflict. And conflicts are inevitable. See, we have a lot of utopian ideals that are not related to reality at all. Anytime two human beings come into a relationship, they bring in two entire histories of conditioning. They're going to be in conflict. Conflict is inevitable. But if we're pursuing some kind of imaginary relationship that is conflict-free, then there are none on the planet. And if you don't have any skills at managing the inevitable conflict that arises in all personal relationships, then you're not going to be able to stabilize in a relationship with nobody. Very often, not even your children. They can't get along with you. There's some people, nobody gets along. Their husband and wife can't get along with them. Their brothers and sisters can't get along with them. You see, no one can get along with them. Most of us have stepped into our adulthood emotionally illiterate, having no skills whatsoever for the effective management of our anger. None. And we'll see that as we go deeper and deeper into it. So we can see then that this anger, the mismanagement and the suppression of this anger is a very deadly thing. It's a very deadly thing. Now, I said before break that we wanted to begin to go a little more into some of the specific arenas in life that we are challenged to manage our anger. Before I do that, let me put on the board for you the task of life that we all are challenged to deal with as we emerge from our respective family of origins. In our families of origin, you know, our nuclear families or what extended family that we come out of, the ideal is to prepare us for the world outside in very specific ways. And if we fail to pick up those skills within the context of our own upbringing, then it stands to reason that in the real world, we're going to have some problems. Now, the reality, folks, is this. All of us had a childhood, and all of us came from some kind of a family, some sort. And probably our mothers and our fathers were not any more perfect than we are. And we know we're not perfect. So hence, obviously, they made some mistakes. Problem, of course, is that these mistakes are very deep within our psyche, in our unconscious, and very often is driving our adult behavior. And a couple of sessions after this one, we're going to go into this thing here. And when you'll begin to start really kind of seeing your condition. It's really interesting, though, most of us never have developed enough subjective sensitivity to see our own condition. In fact, we don't even think we are conditioned. We think we're making decisions that are spontaneous and reflective of the situations. No, not at all. Most of all of our reactions are just triggered from that deep part of us, and we have no idea. So you need to get in touch with that. But in any case, when we emerge from these family systems, we have certain tasks of life. It's an Adlerian term, so you all forgive me, I'm working in the Western idiom today. That we have to confront and negotiate in our adult life. The first one is work. A livelihood, right? Because when you come out of this family system, you got to be able to make a livelihood. And very often, if we have not been prepared, then we'll have trouble. And when I say make a livelihood, I don't mean simply get a job. Because the work that you do, probably as important as who you marry. I know that sounds strange to you, but I'm telling you that the work that you do, the way you make a living, plays a tremendous role in your bottom line experience of happiness. Hence, if you are on a job that you work in 8-9 hours a day and you hate this stuff, half of your life is spent in a state of hate and anger. You have lost half of the opportunity to be happy in the course of a day just by going to work. It's deep. Buddha says that you must find the right livelihood. So I want to emphasize that. Right livelihood. Right livelihood.
Does that mean a job you enjoy?
It means not a job that you enjoy, it means something, work that you love. Work in which you are making a contribution. Work that you love, you will tend to be very successful. You see, all the things that you're looking for up front, you will get automatically as a byproduct. Problem is, of course, that most of us are so out of touch with who we are, right, that we don't know what's right for us. We don't have enough self-knowledge. We don't know what the hell we're supposed to do. We just doing whatever they told us would pay the most, or society says. I mean, but It's almost like you just married anybody society said. I mean, it's the same kind of irrational approach toward life. But it's only because we do not know the intimate relationship that our work has with our happiness and our peace of mind. You see? So I wanted you to understand that as we emerge from this process of being reared and enter into the real world, that we have to have developed the skills to find the right life. More about that as we go through the balance of these sections. But again, up front here, I'm giving you a little bit of the metaphysics as we go along. You see, the other task is, of course, love. We all have the need to be loved and to love in return. It's built into the system. You don't have a choice. It is built into the structure of consciousness. You have no option. Like you have to breathe. Now you can fight it and hold your breath, right? But you can't kill yourself by holding your breath. Nature will force you to breathe. So you got to find somebody to hold your nose to help you not love. You got to get your friends together and talk you out of this going with this man or going with this woman. Y'all help me, because I might, you understand? The point is that you have to be able to meet your love needs. In the family, it was just dumped on you. It was a gratis. Your parents loved you simply because you were theirs, period. It didn't require you to do nothing. And in that, we start expecting the whole world now to give us that same affection or gratis. So we grow up very childish, you see. And what we do very often, we project that same expectation onto people that we meet in our adult world. If my mother has indiscriminately and unconditionally loved me, right? And that love has a certain passion to it that is unique between the relationship that I have with her, right? And it feels good because it's unconditional. Now, when I get married, I will project instantly onto my wife that same expectation. Instantly. I'm not conscious of it. See? But the difference is this. You, my mother, she ain't. Right? So I just can't say, okay, love me, because I put a ring on your finger. This is madness. So we have to learn then and develop those skills that will enable us to have the experience in life called love. Because life without love is meaningless. It is really meaningless. And one of the great tragedy of the modern world, particularly Western society, is that somehow or another we have fought the bankrupt notion that life can be worth living without love. Let me have a career. Phyllis Hyman had a career, and a good one, and the lady killed herself. If careers were adequate, you see, then you will have no phenomena like Phyllis Hyman, right? And in this other people, right? Have a lot of money. A lot of people with money have blew their brains out there. Yes, sister.
You say you must develop the skills in order to receive love or to love?
To put it into play. We have the potential. It's built in. But a lot of times we don't have the skills to implement it. The potential is there. Again, a lot of our ego myths get in the way. Because you don't want to be vulnerable. You see? You don't want to be at risk. You want to protect yourself and curl up. Now, you cannot experience love curled all up. It means you have to be able to walk into the situation with every possibility of heartbreak. Yes, it's true. It go either way, but that has to be there to have the experience. And most of us don't have the ability to manage ourselves there. It's very hard because because those old tendencies tends to pull us out of that. That instinct is there to withdraw, to avoid. And that's a skill. In Buddhism, they call them skillful means. That was one of the aims and objectives in the teachings of the Buddha, was to provide you with the skills for maintaining or achieving maximum results from your life. So there is a skill, how to love. You know, love is a great art. Everybody's born with the potential to love. Very few are born and develop the ability, the skill to love. Love is a very rare phenomenon, understand? Very, very rare. You would think otherwise, with trillions of us running around here, interaction with each other. But love is very rare. And I suppose because the definition of love that I'm referring to is very different from the business that I talked about before. Remember? I mean, it's easy to have a business relationship with another person and disguise that as love. It's just business. Nothing wrong with it, right? But it's just business. But love is really the, you know, you're trying to give something. It is characterized by the fact that it's a giving. It's not looking for anything. Hence, we use a mother's love for a child as the closest analogy that we have for talking about the authentic thing. Because a mother's love for a child is really quite a phenomenon, isn't it? Now, I'm not talking about these abnormal mothers. I'm talking about, you understand, normal mothers. Because, first of all, the love is totally unconditional. Period. It looks for nothing in return. It is not requiring anything. It is a one-way street, so to speak. Because it is a great, the beloved is a great opportunity to unload your love. You know, let me put it to you in some very strong terms. Most of the emotional misery, fact, underlying a lot of the insanity and emotional illnesses that we see plaguing people has been their effort to suppress this. We were talking about suppressing anger and how damaging that is. Oh, but this one here. Suppressing anger is just going to wipe out your mind. Suppress this, you lose your soul. You lose your soul.
Suppression of what? The
Of
need
love.
for love, or
The
the
gift.
ability to give for love?
Yes, well, either one of them. Either one of them. You can't suppress it on either side. You can't suppress on either side. But we try to suppress, unfortunately, on both sides. I don't need no love, and I don't love nobody. Look at that. That's almost the American battle cry. I don't love nobody, and I don't need nobody to love me. Just give me some money.
What love got to do with it?
What love got to do with it? You see? Madness. Madness. And look at the people who are following that philosophy. Look at their lives. It's horrendous. So we have to do this. You know, and again, that is developing the ability to move outside of the confines generated by this ego mythology. You see, we have to learn the skills to drop this ego. That's a skill. Most of us don't know how to drop the ego. It's very hard, in fact. But we have to learn that, you see. Presumably, ideally, within the context of a family. But we know, of course, that's almost rare and non-existent. But again, I'm just simply pointing out the things that we need to be prepared for. The third thing, of course, is that we have to develop skills to cooperate. We have to have cooperative skills. We have to have them. Because again, why? We're all interdependent. None of us in here can survive independently of anybody else. You cannot farm all the food you eat. Most of us are not making the clothes and shoes we're wearing, the gears in your car. Our whole existence is dependent upon some other human being producing something. Right? And we have to learn how to cooperate. This radical individualism of I can do my own thing, that is strictly European, and it is disastrous. And it does not work. It's not even real, you see. And so we have to develop skills to enable us to cooperate and make friends. have to know how to create friendships. You have to have those skills. Otherwise, you will move through life full of competition and with no friends. Have you met them out there, people like that? Totally competitive and friendless. An ugly thing. It's an ugly thing to see a human being reduced to that. Again, those are tasks of life that we have to be able to meet. We have to be able to do that. The fourth one is your relationship to yourself. And that's very, very important. Because no matter how hard we try, you're not going to have a successful relationship with other people if first you don't have a successful relationship with yourself. You don't even know who you are. So how can you even have a self-relationship? Hence again, the first step is knowing who you are. But most of us, because we don't know who we are, we therefore have no relationship with ourselves, and we are alienated from our own life. One of the poets said that the greatest tragedy that befalls a person is to have lived their whole life and been absent the whole time. And that absence is experienced in a deep sense of lack of fulfillment. Now, nothing you're doing is giving you any fulfillment. You tried this, you tried that, you did this, you married him, you married her, you bought this, you bought that, and nothing fills that void inside, that abyss. Because you are absent from your own life. And when you are absent from your own life, that life is meaningless. It is meaningless. And the price you pay is one of uninterrupted misery. But without called dukkha, suffering. One of the poets, I believe it must have been Thoreau, wrote, men and women, of course, are leading lives of quiet desperation. Desperation. Underneath all that pretty makeup and those handsome clothes and the well, beautiful haircuts and stylish suits, live misery and suffering and pain and hopelessness and bleakness. No relationship with this stuff. So we have to develop a relationship with ourselves. And the most important one, a part of that relationship with the self, is self-respect. Now, folks, you have to understand, I make a very deep distinction between self-respect and self-esteem. I've already told you self-esteem is a pseudo-phenomenon. It is false. It is fantasy. It is made of the same stuff that dreams are made of. Hindus have called it Maya, illusion, mythology, stuff you have invented about yourself that has no reality nowhere in your life at all. Self-esteem. Self-respect is a very different phenomenon. It's a very different relationship with yourself. Self-respect is based on the realization that I have imperfections, I have faults, I have shortcomings. And in spite of those imperfections, and in spite of those shortcomings, and in spite of those faults, I have value and worth as a human being. Case is closed. There's nothing to debate about. I exist, therefore I have value. Period. And the moment I cease to exist, you see, only then can anything or anyone be said to be worthless. Because nature, if she is maintaining you, but nature does not maintain, existence does not maintain anything that does not have value. Period. It never happens. So the very fact that we exist means we have worth and value. And self-respect is not just the understanding of that, it is the feeling. You see, self-esteem is a cerebral phenomenon. It has to do with your philosophy, right? Self-respect is a felt experience. You feel that. You feel it the same place you feel love. You see, it's a felt, it's visceral. It permeates your whole being. And so you have to develop a relationship of self-respect, not self-delusion, right? Not self-deception. Incidentally, one of the things that we all will face at some point in our life is that we will come to a point where all of our self-deceptions dissolve. All of the self-deceptions that we've had about ourselves, I'm this, I'm that, I'm intelligent, I'm loving, I'm compassionate, I'm honest, I'm fair, I'm brilliant. Life is going to bring you to those experiences where all of that mythology is going to be totally dissolved, and you're going to be left in a midlife crisis that will be hell. Been my observation that very few people enter the midlife crisis and emerge. Most people perish in that cycle. I had mentioned to Bilal, one of the series that I'm going to do is midlife rites of passages, because most of us have no way, no concept of how to get out of it. It's inevitable. It's inevitable. Because all of that imaginary thinking that you did from your childhood, from the time you thought you could fly through windows, and that kind of magical thinking just followed you all the way up into your adulthood. Now you think I can make $20 billion. This is magical thinking that is carried over from your childhood somewhere, you see. And it's causing you all kinds of misery because you keep failing to make the $20 million. And therefore are experiencing shame in your own eyes. And then you sink into that depression. All because you were attempting life through the mind of a child who was like trying to a Superman complex. So we have to develop a very different relationship with ourselves, predicated on the fact that we all have imperfections, shortcomings, and faults, with no exception. All of us do. And there ain't nothing wrong with that. We'll work on them. We'll discover them, and we will work on them. But in the meantime, my value and worth as a human being is unquestioned. I don't need a PhD to be valuable. You see, I know we've been told that unless you get a PhD, you ain't nobody. Unless you go to Harvard, you ain't nobody. Unless you get you a big house somewhere, you ain't nobody. Unless you have this, you ain't nobody. So we've been fed this stuff so long that now we have this deep sense that, well, my God, without these things, I am nobody. But you are somebody when you hit the planet. Now, nothing else is required but you to celebrate. Life is a celebration. You've done, you made it. This is the graduation. This is the top of the rung. This is the big times, folks, right? The human body. And on this planet, there's been 8,400,000 other bodies you've been through to get to this human body. Who knows how long it's taking you to get that? You paid all of this. You graduated. There is no preparation. You don't have to be anybody. You are. Nobody says to a tree, be somebody. You're a tree. Done. What is there to be? You see? But our whole sense of worth is based on having. Our identity is, we move horizontally. Have more. We have that have more mentality. Right? Be more. Just be yourself. Just be more yourself. That's it. That's all you got to do. Why? Because God has reflected in each and everything in creation an aspect of His uniqueness, His greatness, His grandness. God is the sum total of that which exists, and in each particle of that which exists is a reflection of the immensity of the phenomena called God. Unique, not repeated at all. Hence, if you are endowed by virtue of the fact you exist with a quality in you of God that is in nobody else. And if you fail to unfold that and share it with creation, then you have cheated all of us. And you have betrayed your own, gift. Just be more of what you already are, as opposed to this have more in order to be something. So again, these are shifts in your relationship with yourself. And that has to be there. No sense in talking about, I'm trying to improve my relationship with my husband or my wife. What kind of nonsense are you talking? If you have not tried to first improve your relationship with yourself, how can you possibly improve your relationship with your husband or wife, or your children, or your boss, or your neighbors, or your friends, or your business associates, or your clients, or it doesn't matter. In what area of relationship you trying to work? If you have not first worked on improving your relationship with yourself, if you have not accepted yourself, why should anybody else accept you? That's why you trying to get all these accoutrements to go with you. Because deep down inside you feel that as you are inadequate. So let me get 2 PhDs, let me give me 4 Mercedes-Benz, let me give me 7 houses, because then maybe, it's nonsense. Deep down inside you are feeling inferior. Deep down inside you feel that you have no value and worth, just naked, just as you are. And I'm telling you, just as you are, you have worth enough. You can't have more worth than that. In fact, this other stuff obscures the worth. It obscures it. Now I can't see your value behind all the Mercedes. These Mercedes blinds it. You know, these PhDs have blinded your natural intelligence. You see? I could see it clearly if there was no PhDs. I could see your brilliance, just brilliant. But you went and got these PhDs, so now I think, well, maybe they're brilliant because they went and got a PhD. Now I realize that they were brilliant without a PhD. So sometimes these things obscures the fact. And we have to not lose ourselves, our identities in these things. So we have to alter our relationship with ourselves. And if we haven't, and if no one has told us this while we're growing up, and very rarely do they tell us this when we're growing up, right? Because your mama said if you don't get you a job and get you a car and get out of here, you ain't gonna be nothing. She don't know any better. But when you're telling that to a 4 or 5-year-old kid who believes the parent is infallible, who believes that when the parent says there's a Santa, the child finds it lock, stock, and barrel. What Bilal called the age of wonder and magic. And so when that parent tells you ain't going to be nothing unless you do this, and this kid goes there, and then here they go their whole life, struggling, trying to be something. You see? So we have to restore the right relationship to ourselves. Okay, which necessitates a lot of work on oneself. And then the fifth, certainly not the least task that we have to be prepared for is our home mortality. The fact of the matter is that death is real. Certain. You can count on it. Right? And now we have to find some meaning in life, taking death into consideration. What are you struggling to pay your mortgage off? You talking about a little 30, 40 years? You talking about what, 70 years on this little planet called Earth, a little speck of mud floating amidst the appalling immensity of the physical world. And then you're down on this little piece of mud in this little neighborhood for 70 years. What is 70 years out of infinity? It is nothing. Right? Death is real. And life has to be made meaningful within the context of death. Now we do the opposite. In our culture, we hide from death. Right? All the cemeteries are put out on the way away. You understand? Everything is hidden. You see, nobody sees. In fact, you see everybody else dying, but you never see yourself dying. Now this is strange. When you see everybody else dying, for some reason you think you're not going to die. And the reality is that you're going to die. And now you got to deal with your mortality. And if you don't, believe me, crisis, about 40, 35, 40, suddenly the body going to start breaking down. Suddenly, you understand? The eyes go bad, and suddenly you realize, my God, I'm going to die. It hits you at this midlife. And again, one of the things I've noticed that during the midlife crisis is that there's so few of us prepared for the inevitability of our own demise. It shakes us up, right? But that's one of the first things that starts this off. So we have to prepare ourselves. You see? We have to live a life that is so authentic that when death comes, I ain't gonna have nothing left for it to take. I would have used up all the life. You see? Take these bones and this bag of skin. That's it. I spent all my life. I did it. Right? But when you have held back living, thinking that you ain't gonna die, now when death comes, and it will come, and you will cling and you will scream and beg for one more hour. Give me one more hour. I didn't get that Mercedes. Give me one more. I didn't get that. You understand? Full of regret. You would die like a coward. People like that die 1 billion times in the one. Like a real person dies once. It's over with. Because you've lived. And you've lived abundantly, full. That's what the scriptures mean, to have been given life abundantly. You live. You see. When I said death, do I mean your soul, your consciousness? No, of course not. When I talk about mortality, I'm talking about your ego. Because you've been many people before. What makes you think now that this entity that you give the name to, this person that I call Bhagwan, the consciousness that makes up this configuration has existed? I can't even talk about the fact of time, because there was no time. And it will go on existence. This body will change, yes. The little ego will change, of course. But if you identify with this ego in this body, then you will experience death. If your identity has been shifted to the deepest recesses of your being, to where Jesus shift is, and where Krishna shift is, and the Buddha shift is, then you know you don't die. You know, what is the problem? No problem. So it's a very different thing. So again, our mortality and the necessity to shift the level of identities off of this body and this ego becomes necessary. Otherwise, we will live under the fear and tyranny of death. And you can't live like that. You can't live if you're afraid of death. It's just not possible. So these then are the tasks that we need to be prepared for in order to make the most of our adult lives. Now, I'm putting all of this up here because throughout the balance of these workshops and lectures, I will be coming back to these things time and time again, and I want you to have a better understanding of what I'm talking about. Now, for the categories of anger, because you can see clearly how these categories of anger will start helping you to, managing these categories of anger will help you manage these tasks of life. The first category of anger, and we're going to talk about that today, and then we'll finish, we'll start some more next session. I'll put the first category here is our anger at others. The second category is others' anger at us. The third category is our anger at self. The fourth category is anger at the absent other. And I'm going to talk a little bit about all of these, so don't worry. And the fifth is abstract anger. Now, there's many other subcategories, but these are the 5 major categories. And now let's look at the first one here, our anger at others. Because if we don't learn how to manage our anger at others, will we be able to develop friendships? Will we be able to develop a spirit of cooperativeness? No way. No way. If you don't learn how to manage your anger at others, that other may be your boss, right? Or an employee, so you're going to have a hard time, you know, on jobs and things of that nature. So it's just something that we have to learn to do. Anger at others. And we all get angry at others. Again, the problem is not anger. The problem is the mismanagement of anger. That's the problem. You know, that's what we want to learn how to do. How do we handle anger at others effectively? How do we normally go about handling anger at others?
You should try to make amends.
Yeah. Well, you angry at the other person, so you should make amends with them.
Sometimes, yeah.
All right. What do you mean by that?
I mean, you should try to talk about it.
All right.
If they're approachable.
Well, you're the one angry at the other, right? And if they're
If I'm
approachable,
angry
you
at
try
them,
to
I'll
talk
approach
about it.
them.
All right, then. So you want to talk about it. We call that telling the truth. And we tell the truth about our feelings. Now, the reality is that most of us never tell the truth about our feelings. And you certainly don't do it when there's something that's big. Telling the truth about our feelings is right. Because you tell the truth and the truth shall do what? Set who free?
You.
You. Has nothing to do with the other person. That's the first thing you got to understand. The telling of the truth has nothing to do with the other person. Not trying to impress nobody. You know, don't make it a part of your ego structure. All right? Most of us make telling the truth part of our ego too. You know, I tell the truth all the time, so now I'm telling you the truth, and that's public proof that I'm telling the truth all the time. It's an ego trip. Values. Right? You tell the truth as an act in your own behalf. Because whose anger is it? It's your anger. Who's miserable? You. It's some relief you are giving yourself. But we have to tell the truth about our feelings, and we don't know how to do that. Very often, most of us are alienated. We don't even know how we feel anymore. We've got so alienated from it. And even if that's not the case, but if this feeling is one of anger, and you got this ego myth going that says you never get angry, you're in a dilemma, aren't you? Right? I can't tell the person I'm angry at them because I've already told them I don't get angry. Now you're in a dilemma. Right? In a dilemma. But you're certainly right. To tell the truth is one of the ways that we can go about managing our anger at others. But you have to tell the truth the right way. If I'm angry at you and I confront you and I'm just start hollering at you, you know you made me just, what's going to happen to her?
She's going to get
Offensive.
mad.
She's going to get angry too, isn't she?
Yeah.
Right? So you have to use the right tone. There's a part of the brain, you all know, the reticular complex, the base of the brain, the serpent energy they call it. This instinct, this energy in us responds to sound and light. Now the ancients represented it as a serpent because it acts like a serpent. Like that serpent is coiled and you come close and it strikes you instantly. Right? Well, this kind of reaction is instantaneous, like the bite of a snake. And the energy lies coiled here in the base of the brain, running all the way down to the spine. And the Indians call it Kundalini. Those of you familiar with that, Kundalini and Chi and all that other stuff. And this is the energy now, right? Base source of energy that triggers this thing. And it is sensitive to sound. So when you are hollering at somebody, even telling them the truth, far from getting their cooperation, you're going to get their confrontation, right? So you have to use the right music. It can't be way up here, and it can't be way down here. It has no credibility when you're real down here. You're a joke, right? And if you're way up here, you're a threat. It's got to be right in the middle. And you have to practice that. Yeah? Because most of us never done that. Then we told the truth way up there or way down there. Your boss made you angry. You see see what I'm saying? That's how we express our anger at the boss, out of earshot, right? Because you don't want to be fired, right? Or if a person that is perceived as weaker than us, you make me, we all up over that person. You see what I'm saying? Which again is an effect. So we have to practice getting it right in the middle, the right music. Will we get it right every time? Absolutely not. You don't need to be perfect. Just good enough. All right? Just good enough. That's all we need to do. And that comes from practice. Now, you can't read a book and learn, okay, this is what they say here, and then think that that's it. And now you're going to get up and put the book down and have the skill. You will not have the skill. You're going to have to, first of all, in your imagination, see yourself telling the truth about yourself. Do it. One of the things, neuro-associative conditioning is what they call it. And it is used very often in, among athletes. And we found, for instance, that we have a player that's having some bad free throws, shooting. Rather than put him out on the court, set them down, relax them, show them some breathing exercise, have them visualize, come into their imagination. The imagination is a faculty in human consciousness, right, that creates, right? Everything is put together in the imaginative faculty. So you through the process of visualization, you get him in there, right, and see himself standing at the free throw, just shoot. Have him shoot 300 baskets, see them all going in. And after that process is in, you can actually take this person up, step them to the line, and you will see a dramatic improvement in their physical mobility. And they haven't even physically touched the ball. And the reason for that is that everything that you do out here, you must first do in your mind. And in a specific place in your mind. Not in the basement, right? The mind, we talked already a little bit about it, right? Now I'll tell you about the surfaces. We didn't finish all of it. I told you that we can't finish it all. But certainly, one of the things that you'll find, and that the mind, in addition to having memory and the capacity to do rational thought, rational thinking, categorizing, it also has a creative function. That's the imagination. Okay? The imagination. The house of Heru, we call it, because that's where the energy lives. So by putting in there, by a person visualizing doing a thing, then what it does, it trains subconscious. It trains every cell in the body. Every cell in the body. Whatever you put here goes through all the cells. Because each cell has its own brain. It's strange, isn't it? You thought all your intelligence was localized. No. Everywhere there's a cell, there's a brain. It has its own intelligence. So your intelligence is a cumulative, it's a composition of the intelligence permeating your whole being. The intelligence in your toe is a part of your IQ. You see? So you have to understand it is an aggregate phenomenon. Right? And through the faculty of imagination, you are able to involve all of the cells. So it is training at the cellular level. Hence, its efficacy. And meditation has been known for centuries. So I'm not saying something that is new. This is no new age anything. I don't even know why they call it new age, because all of the wisdom is old age. We should call it an old age movement. Right? In any event, see yourself telling the truth. Because when you do that, you'll start feeling those complexes in you that resist you telling the truth. You will know exactly what you got to work on. You see? You'll know exactly what you got to work on. And what you're going to find, your most difficult barrier will be this ego mythology. It's hard to get past it. It's hard to get past it. But in any case, telling the truth in the right way. And what is it that you're trying to get the person to do? First, you're trying to get their cooperation out of you. Right? If you have a grievance with another person that has caused you to have the experience of anger, the only way to resolve the conflict is to try to get that person cooperation. That might be your husband, might be your wife, maybe your boss. You know, people that you cannot and do not want to separate yourself from. So you got to be able to resolve the conflict. You can't resolve conflict if you can't seek and establish cooperation. The heart of conflict resolution depends upon one's ability to cooperate, to actually be able to bring another person or enter into a space with another person where cooperation can take place. So you're seeking their cooperation, right? And the relief comes in the sense that you're now able to tell your tale. Because, again, your anger is your perception. It don't mean it actually happened. It don't mean it's really real, but you need to tell your side of the story, right? Because this is what I see. This is what I see, and you need to be able to do that. The person needs to be able to hear you tell your tale in order for you to get some relief. But if you cannot create cooperation in that person, you can't tell your tale. So these are the things you're looking for. And you want to tell the truth in this thing, of course. You know, when you do get a chance to open your mouth, tell the truth. And you tell the truth exactly about how it makes you feel. And how does it make you feel? Fundamentally, have you ever thought about it when you're angry at somebody? What is the deep underlying core of the experience? Think about it. When you were angry at somebody. Anybody has a recent anger attack? I know you have, but will anybody talk openly about it? Right?
Yeah.
You have one?
I had one at work.
All right.
Where an attorney came in to have some work done. He was setting up work for the holiday.
Mm-hmm.
And I was going to be the only one at work. And I had to work for everybody who was there. So he wanted me to give him like a priority, which means do my work first every time it comes in. And I told him I couldn't do that because I didn't know who else was coming to work that day. And he went to personnel and told him I said that I wasn't going to do his work, which is not what I said.
All right. And now, and so you were angry at him, right? So there's the lawyer. And what was she angry about? What did the lawyer do?
He lied.
He lied.
Disrespectful.
Right, he lied on her, right? And that wasn't fair, was it? So he violated your whole definition of what is the truth and what is fair, which is your definition, right? And that's your perception of what you saw. And when the people lie on you and treat you so unfairly, that makes you what?
Angry.
Right. Makes you angry. Again, I want you to see all these connections, right? And that anger was some energy for you to do something about it. Did you do anything about it?
No, I got the call. That's when I found out.
Yeah, but I'm saying now that you found out about it, after you found out about it, what did you do with that anger energy?
Nothing.
You violated your ego mythology, didn't you?
Well,
no, I'm only teasing.
yeah.
But at point, she got the anger and she suppressed it, didn't she?
Yeah.
Right? Now, more than to suppress this anger, I want to look and see right underneath this anger. We know what she did to the anger, but I want to see the feeling that was underlying that anger. How did that make her feel? So, when this lawyer comes in here, barks out all these orders to you, and then when you don't do it and you offer him a rational explanation, you were courteous, you went all over him, etc. And then he goes back and lied, and which is so unfair and all these other things, and they call you to confront you about it.
Yeah.
How did that make you feel about yourself?
Well, it made me feel, well, I don't know.
Yeah, that's the
I
thing.
had confused feelings because
Right.
I thought I was handling it the best way I could. He just asked me a simple question. I didn't see what the problem was.
It confused you because you couldn't see
I didn't
what in the
understand
world was this man going on for.
Yeah.
Because you couldn't see anything in the encounter that
That
would
I
warrant
did.
it. Right. So you confused, and then the fact that they took his testimony and confronted you with, how did that make you feel about yourself? What conclusion?
It made me feel like I didn't count because
That you
why are
didn't-
you confronting me with something he said and you didn't even ask me,
All right.
did I talk to him first
So
of
you
all?
didn't count at all, did you?
No, I didn't
So what
count.
do we call it when a person have a feeling that they don't count?
Worthless.
Huh?
Worthlessness.
Useless.
He made you feel worthless.
Yeah.
Like you didn't count.
Yeah, I didn't count.
And you will find that almost all of our anger too. Now, remember when I said something about your self-relationship? Now look how you're relating to yourself in that instance. Suppose you had a billion of those episodes. You will start crystallizing, right? A constellation will form one. A complex will form one. And you'll start feeling that fundamentally, I am. Now look what that's done to your relationship to yourself. Right? We call that self-contempt. Right? The exact opposite of self-respect. Is that self-respect when you walk around putting down work? Does that enhance your self-respect? So you're right. And that's what we'll find with most of us. That when we peel down our anger and get down to the issues, we begin to find out that the bottom line self-experience is one of worthlessness. And that destroys our self-respect. Right? And when you destroyed your self-respect, and since you felt worthless, there was no point. It almost like, nothing to do.
Well, the only thing I said was that even if I confronted him, he would just lie to me and tell me he didn't say that to her.
Yeah. So you let it win.
I let it go.
Right.
Because I didn't think I could get truth out of him.
Yeah. You let it go.
I let it go.
Which is another technique. Is you can just let it go. Right? And give yourself, but what you don't want to do is suppress it and then displace it. You didn't whoop the kids that night. Think hard now. Did you come home? Did you holler, snap at pool or anything? What about on the expressway?
No, I got my girls riled up because we were sitting in a room
okay.
full
So
of
you
people.
went and you called.
And then I told everybody, I said, you know that guy
You
who was
started a
just
commotion,
here?
right?
He called personnel and told them I said I wasn't going to do the job. And then everybody couldn't believe it. They were as surprised as I was. So
you got a little.
I got it all. I let everybody get mad.
So she displaced across the office.
Yeah,
right?
I let everybody get mad about it because he was sitting in a room full of people. Everybody was cordial to him.
So what she did, she went and shared her anger.
I shared it.
Isn't
I
that
put it
nice?
on.
She went and shared her
They
anger.
understood where I was coming from.
Well, that's a way of handling our anger. But we're going to look as we go down further at these different styles. We all got our style. We all got our style. But I'm glad that you volunteered that because what I want you to see is that underneath the feeling of anger, there's a feeling of worthlessness. All comes from that. And this is the thing that is dangerous because too much of it will destroy your sense of self-respect and your relationship to yourself, and you'll wind up in a state of
And this is how anger is, hatred is created.
Of
Because
course.
these are only attempts to chip your self-respect.
Yes.
And if you are somewhat intact or if you're trying to be intact, you understand that this is an attempt to chip you.
Yeah.
And but you can't
Absolutely.
see your recourse.
Right. Absolutely. But this is the foundation of hatred. Because what is
That's the
hatred?
foundation of hatred.
Hatred is the intent of
Just
is
hate 'em.
revenge.
Yeah.
It's a thirst for revenge. Because the truth of the matter is that most of us normally seek relief from our anger at others through an act of revenge, however colorful. Sometimes it's unconscious. You sitting down, you angry at your wife, and you sleep, and she just happened to walk by and tripped over you. You didn't do it on purpose. And really on the surface of your mind, you didn't do it. But the subconscious knew that you had revenge, and it has an independent life of your conscious mind. I want you to understand that. It is independent. It does its own thing. Right? On your conscious side, you said no, but the subconscious knows what's going down. You see? And you accidentally waste some pop on her dress. I mean, it will really feel like an accident to you. You apologize, but the point is the unconscious was there. So we tend to go for revenge because the feeling is that, well, so-and-so hurt me, I'm going to hurt them back. When Emma went into the secretary pool and riled up those people, right? It was her way of trying to, what?
And then I got him back again, though.
See, she got revenge.
You got revenge.
I did get revenge.
You got revenge.
Yes, I did.
All right, tell us how you got
Well,
revenge.
one-on-one.
Tell us what happened. How you
Okay,
did it.
he was supposed to give me work for 2 days. The first day he didn't show up.
All right, so this is a whole 2 days later, right?
Yeah, so I had forgotten about
On the surface part.
Yeah, I had forgot about him. The last day that I worked, he came in, and it was like he came in, and to me, he was insulting me again. He said, "Oh, I see that there's a couple people here today." So I said, "Well, I'm the only one on the clock." So I was letting him know that you still got to deal with me. So he gave me his work. He only gave me 3 or 4 pages, which means he didn't have the whole thing. And I'm still operating that if other people bring me work, I still have to do it, which is exactly what happened. And by the time he finally got his whole job together, I was doing a rush for someone who was there, who was sitting in the room with me. And I told him, I probably won't be able to finish your job because you just gave me all of your work. And that caused him a dilemma. But it didn't bother me.
Of course.
That was my revenge.
That was your revenge.
I finished it, but he didn't know that I would.
And you were
And
going
I didn't either.
Okay.
Really, I didn't know that I would either. When I finished with the other person, I just went to work on his stuff.
Right.
And
You could have put his in front of the other person.
Huh? No, I could not have.
You couldn't have?
No, I could not have. But what it was, I needed to stay over 10 minutes to finish his job, and I stayed over to finish it. But he didn't have knowledge of that. He only had the knowledge that I wouldn't finish it, but I would do as much as I could. I like that.
Now, what's going to happen next? Do we see a chain reaction going to set up here? Yeah. What can we almost predict going to happen?
He going to get me back.
Hatfield McCoy.
What is Hatfield McCoy?
It's just
ongoing feud.
But Sister Keeper, you were going to make a comment?
Yeah, I could see her probably maybe demonstrating to him too that she was competent, that she could do it.
I did it.
And so I could see that she maybe subconsciously she didn't want him to feel that she could not handle the job, and she could.
Right.
And I can see him not coming back with any kind of rebuttal. I could see him understanding, well, maybe not understanding, but seeing her
He
from a
knows I
different
got him back
perspective.
because he left with one piece of
Looking
information.
at her
got
from a
something
different perspective, and
Yes.
so maybe he
Changes
might
that.
alter the way he approaches her the next time.
But they're definitely going to have some common. But the
Mm-hmm.
point is that that whole process is one that we go through sometime 100 times a day. You know, and so we all therefore have those challenges. And again, these are things that just are ordinary parts of life. And the ideal is to manage the anger in such a way, because you're going to get angry. The ideal is to manage it in such a way that it is psychologically healthy and nonviolent. You see, that's the whole goal. And we won't get it right all the time. We just need to get it right enough. So that this man don't come back one day when you and see the paper is not done and pull a 45 out and blow your brains out. So, again, that's a good example. But the thing is, this is a little extreme. But the point is that most of us seek relief from our anger at others by an act of anger, either revenge, either overt or covert. You see, and that just sets up a whole cycle. But you have to have a degree of sensitivity, subjective sensitivity, to see that in ourselves. More about this example later on down the session when we come to early recollection, because we're going to see something. We're going to see that that's a historical technique. And certainly she did not invent that on the spot, folks. Don't be deceived. This has been a style that's been there since 5 or 6 years old. It is a traditional tool that she has in her bag of tools for handling anger. And then you put it back in. You see? And she's been carrying around all of her, whatever old age she is. All right? I won't tell that. So we all have our bag of tools. It's just that these tools are tools that from our childhood. And they're no longer appropriate. And that's all. And we just have to update it. Okay? But boy, we're just about out of time for today. I don't think I'll go into the next segment. We'll continue where we left off today, next time. We're still talking about the first category of anger, our anger at others, and how to manage that anger. And next time we're going to talk about some of the consequences that we are experiencing when we don't manage it right. We're going to hopefully have, I'd like for you to feel comfortable to bring your incidents from your day-to-day real stuff, as long as it's not too personal for you, because the ideal is that here, I try to stress the fact that your worth and value as a human being is not an issue. So you're free to just be yourself. But we share, through these demonstrations, we get so many different perspectives of how each of us have gone about handling certain difficult situations. All right, so in the last 5 minutes, are there any questions about anything that we said thus far?
I know that you just about the reticular complex, you said that two things that affect it is sound and light.
Yes.
What about light?
Light, yes. Whenever, for instance, there's a sudden light, it'll startle. You see, a sudden light will startle. It'll scare you. That's why a lot of people have fear of light, stuff like that.
Oh.
Light.
And that triggers epileptics. And even some video games will bring on
Even
seizures.
some video, we all know that now. We didn't know that prior to the age of the video game, but that's one of the things. In fact, there's a thing called rapid eye movement, okay, that's based on that whole concept. And you use it to remove traumas, but it also can cause traumas. Like,
It's interesting. I just caught a little bit of something last night, and they were talking about this technique, and it's all in the eyes. They use it to help people to release themselves of really painful events in their lives.
right. And one of the theories that, you know, your eyes, when we talk, like when we communicate each other, and the way your eyes are moving is a reflection of where you are in your brain, what part of your brain you are accessing for the information that is involved in the conversation. Like if I'm looking this way, I'm looking that way, I'm looking up, you can tell whether I'm pulling from the right hemisphere, left hemisphere, whether I'm pulling from a past memory, if I'm looking straight ahead. You know, and there's about 6 or 7 different positions of the eyes, because there's a physiology of thinking. Now, in ancient times, men and women who had studied mysticism understood the physiology of thinking. So sometimes not just the eyes, but I mean even the body, the breathing. You can even see which nostril. I mean, there's all kinds of things. But the point is that there's a physiology. So if that is the case, if a person has got a trauma somewhere, right, and you know what part of the brain it is, you know which place to put the eyes in, because just by doing a word association with a person. For instance, word association test, where you're given a word, and I say knife, and you react, and I say pencil, and you say react, where you're given association, where you can measure the delay in the person's response, and you can tell whether there's an emotional conflict, because they're hesitating, which means there's some emotional material they're processing. It's not a smooth, immediate response. And each one of us have a different average. If I gave Linda 100 words here, right, some of those words would trigger certain traumas in her, where she'll pause. Her eyes will follow, you know, where is that, right? And they will never know because of that. So there's a lot of different ways. Dream analysis is probably one of the most popular ways to access the unconscious, the contents in your personal unconscious. And remember, I'm making a distinction between your personal unconscious and the unconscious per se. There's something in you that you can't know. And then there's some things that you've known and have forgotten that is buried in the personal unconscious, and that can be traumatizing. And so rapid eye movement is a methodology, a recent methodology, but one of many for dealing with that. So these are all very interesting things. One of the things you're going to find as we go deeper and deeper, and one of the things I like about these kind of things, is that for the first time we can really go deep, because this is the structure on which you have to build your spirituality. It is also the structure on which you have to develop the quality of your life. This is not just philosophy. This is not psychology. This is not just sitting around talking about these things. At least I hope that you don't take it like that. My intention is that you should really take advantage of this information and really do some homework. So, what I want you to do as homework for the next session is I want you to really reflect and introspect and really list out for yourself mostly. But certainly if you can share something like that next time with us, how you personally handle your anger at others. Out of all the ways you handle your anger, I want you to find your dominant style of handling your anger at others. Is it going mute, the old silent treatment? It is to become confrontation? It is to avoid the situation? I mean, what is your dominant? There's many different ways, but you're going to find you have a dominant style. I want that dominant style. I want you to know it. You don't have to necessarily share, but you should know your dominant style of managing your anger next time. You should do that much homework on yourself. Because this awareness of that is the first step in managing it. Because it's habituated in spot has been going on a long, long time. And it's probably so that'll be the homework, is to locate through introspection the dominant style that you have for managing your anger. Do you turn into a gossiper? A lot of people don't know that. Gossip is a form of anger expression. I'm angry at you, Linda, so I'll go and I'll gossip about you. Really? It's a form of anger. Now, I don't know how to express my anger at Linda. I don't know how to tell her the truth. I don't know how to negotiate. I don't know how to seek a cooperation and give some money. None of that. So I go gossip on her. You know, Linda, she did this, and her old man this and this. You know what I mean? And I'm hurting her at the time. I'm hurting her image. I'm beating the hell out of Linda's image. Look at me. I'm tearing it up. Unconsciously, that's what I want to do. I want to beat her up. But I can't, so I beat up her image. It's deep. It's deep. You see? But it is a form of mismanaged anger. Right? It's a form of mismanaged anger. It's a covert form of seeking revenge, where you're beating up the image now, the reputation. So, yes.
I don't know if I'm so aware of, in order to uncover it, you know what I'm saying? Because you just brought up this whole issue of
You don't use gossip, do you?
I don't even think about it, but sometimes I do. Sometimes
we all.
And so I hadn't thought about that I might do that until you mentioned it, so I don't know how I'm going to come up with it.
You just examine, look at as much as you can. Sometimes, you know, you have to spend a little time with it because it's obscured. And again, it requires us to kind of redirect our attention for once on ourselves, and we have to begin to sort through memories and using our imaginative faculty, trying to see ourselves. You may have to go and just take a survey. People, you know now how I act when I get in. What do I do? Because it may come to that, I don't know. But the point is that each of us need to bring that up into awareness, not to condemn us. Do this make us bad human beings because we gossip? Absolutely not. Remember, according to me, there is no question of your value and worth. That's never going to be no issue here, right? We just want to find the stuff that is no longer adequate. Edited. Simple. Gossiping might have been the only way that a 4 or 5-year-old could really get revenge, because it's weak and it's powerless. It can't whoop nobody, you see. So it can beat up the image, the reputation, you see. Or there may be a threat, you know, that, well, this is my boss. I can't, you know, run the risk of being fired, abandoned, but I'm angry. So, I mean, there's all kinds of ways. Dreams even. Some people, they process a lot of their anger in dreams. Or they be tearing people up in dreams, you understand? Killing people and all kinds of stuff, you know. So sometimes one goes into the dream usually is an evasion of the contents of the unconscious, stuff that you don't even know going on, you see. And that stuff comes up out of that dream because it's trying to get some relief. If it can't find no relief out here on this plane of reality, then it seeks relief at the next plane, and it'll go into a dream state. A lot of times that's where we'll take our lust, or we'll take our grief. I mean, really that low down shadow stuff that you don't want nobody to know anything about it. You see, that stuff you know it's there, but you don't want to. You can't have no opportunity to act it out. You might go to jail. Someone catch you. So you usually go into a dream state, and in that you give yourself some relief. You see. So I think we did enough for today. So next Saturday at noon, and Spirit took off last week. This will be session 2 in a series of